friends, it's Shari. Today I'm sharing a cute card where I used stencils layered over top of one another to create a cute background. I'm starting out with the You're a Keeper stamp set and one of the little speech bubbles. I will be stamping all of my images in jet black ink onto white cardstock so that I can do some alcohol marker coloring. I am going to stamp some extra bees there. And then for the little bee trails, I'll be stamping these in some gray ink. This is Hippo ink. I just wanted those to be a little lighter than the black color. And for the sentiment, I'm using my black licorice ink. Now I'm using some Olo markers today, and I realized that there was a little bit of a glare on my caps, so I'm just listing those colors at the bottom that I used for my beekeeper's outfit. I'm using 3 different shades, and I started out with my darkest shade first. Now I'm going in with that middle shade and kind of blending it out. And then I will pull in an even lighter one to blend it out even more. Next, for my bear, I'll use some browns for his face. I'll use 2 different colors, so I'll go in first with the darker shade, kind of figuring out where the shadows are underneath the hat and along the neck, and then I'll blend this out with a lighter brown color. I'll use this same brown to do his little paws and his ears. I've picked a lighter shade in that same color family for his muzzle, and then I'm pulling in a gray color for his boots. Now for the netting over his face, I have a very pale blue-green that I'm going around where you can see the color. I even went over the coloring that I did on his face and his outfit so that you can see there's a slight blue tint. And then for some added detail, I'm using a white gel pen, and I will also use a very, very fine black liner to add some little netting detail lines. For the beehive, I'm going in with some very pale yellows, adding a little bit of darkness around the outside edges of the drawers and then pulling that in with the lighter color. I'll go back to that darker gray that I used for his boots, for the little handles and the feet on the hive. For the little bees, I have 2 colors of yellow, and I just put a little bit of that dark yellow along the bottom of the bee, and then I'll blend it out with the lighter color. I like that these are bright, bright yellow. And then for the wings, I have a BG11. You're going to see me actually go back in with a different color right here. This one is an Olo color, but it's a little bit darker, and I just thought it made the bee's wings stand out a little bit more. There is going to be a lot of yellow on this card, so I wanted that blue to stand out. I've cut them out with the coordinating dies, and I'll just set those aside. Now I have a piece of speckled eggshell cardstock and the largest outside in stitch rectangle, and I've cut myself a panel to go on the front of my card. This is where I'm going to do some stenciling. I've used some removable adhesive on the back, and then I'm pulling out the honeycomb stencil, and I will be going all over this background with a layer of scattered straw distress ink. And I'm not being too careful to completely fill this in. I kind of want to skip around a little bit so you can see I have some lighter areas. I'm just shifting this large hexagon of the honeycomb around until I can fill this whole background. And mostly I'm just holding this with my hand in place because I'm not doing too much stenciling. Now that I have a light layer of that scattered straw, I'm lining this stencil back up and I'm going back in with a little bit of wild honey to give myself a little bit more darker areas in a different shade. I really like doing the corners too to kind of define those corners a little bit. And now for my favorite part of this card, I have the paint splatter stencil, and I am going to be using some of the gold stencil paste to put through the stencil and create the look of some honey splatters on our honeycomb. And I just think that this looks so cool when you do this. So I have my stencil down with some magnets and a little bit of tape just to protect the edge in case I get my stencil paste off the edge. And I'm just picking up that gold paste with a palette knife and putting it through the stencil and making sure it's all nice and spread out evenly. Then I'm moving it to the bottom corner and I'm going through the same process. So I'll have these really fun honey splatters on the top right corner and the bottom left, giving it this cool diagonal effect. And before this is dry, I'm going to go throw that stencil into a sink full of water so it doesn't dry on there. And I'm also going to add some glitter to this honey to make it really sparkle. So I pulled out my chunky glitter and a little tiny spoon, and I'm just sprinkling that onto that wet paste so it will stick there, just a little bit of shine. But I'm also going to do the same with some Prisma glitter, and this is just going to add some really added dimension and shimmer to this gold paste. And I just think this is a really fun technique to add even more interest to your paste stenciling. So I'll just tap off that excess glitter, and then here is that really fun panel with the stencil paste and the glitter. I'll set that aside to dry, and now that it has completely dried, I'm adding this to a card base that I have created from some mermaid cardstock. I'm using some liquid glue. I started out with some tape runner, but since this is a little warped from the moisture from the paste, I wanted to make sure it's well stuck down. So I added liquid glue, and I'm just going to set a block on it so it dries nice and flat. While that's drying, I am cutting out this scripty hello from Peacock cardstock and this stitched sentiment banner from some number 2 pencil cardstock. I actually cut out the hello 4 times, and I'm going to stack those so I get a nice thick die cut sentiment for my card. So I'm just adding a little bit of liquid glue to each of these and stacking them one on top of the other until I have that thick sentiment. I'm also stamping a sentiment on this little sentiment banner. I'm stamping the sentiment that says flying by to say, and I'm going to stamp this to the far right of the sentiment banner so that I can put it up in this top left corner, and I will just trim off that extra piece of the banner up there. So I did add that with a little bit of foam adhesive so it's popped up a little bit. And now I'm just adding my images around so I can get my placement where I want them to be before I start gluing things down. So I have my little bear with his speech bubble and his hive. Then I have all of these cute little bees with their trails. And I really love how that gray stamped trail kind of disappears on the background. And for this little guy, I thought it would be fun to kind of thread his trail through the O of the hello. So I am going to go ahead and tack that down with a few dots of liquid glue. I like that it goes through the O and then out the back side. And then I'll go ahead and glue this down. For this little bee, I am going to use a little foam square so he's popped up a little bit. For my bear, I wanted to make it look like a little bee has landed on his hand that is up in the air, which I just think is really cute. And I do have foam squares for the back of my bear and my hive so that they have some dimension as well. So I'll just pop these guys on there. And then I can start to glue down all my other little bees around my bear. I do have a little trail for the one on his hand. So I will put that in there, tucking it behind that little bee bum so it looks like it's coming right from the bee. For these other little bees, I did cut a foam square in half, and I'm using that to pop them up a little bit. But for their trails, I will just glue those directly to the background with a little bit of liquid glue. You could also stamp these little trails if you wanted and you didn't want to die cut them out. I think that would also have a really great look. And then, of course, I have that little speech bubble that says "Hello, honey," which I just think is really cute. I am adding a little bit of liquid glue to the back of the foam because I'm sticking it to that paste and all that glitter, and I want to make sure that it stays in place. Now, I do like adding my little hearts to projects for that little pop of color. So I have 5 little teeny tiny hearts cut with the Hearts and Stars skinny tag die from Guava cardstock, and I've just placed those sprinkled around my card. And then here is my finished card. I love that shine of that honey in the background and the fun stenciling behind it. So I hope today's card has inspired you to break out some of your stencils and make some really fun backgrounds for your cards. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.